Araneae Storm checking in. And if you're here to transform, then you come to the right place. All right, today we're talking about Saturn. All right, Saturn, Aries, retrograde. Saturn and the bones of fire and legacy. All right. I think that this Saturn retrograde is going to be a transformational one. I think ancestrally and soul reckoning. I know we talked about Saturn and Aries before previously, just the transit alone, but now that it's going to be going into retrograde, it started around the 12th, and then it'll go back into Pisces. I know. It'll go back into Pisces September 1st, and then it'll be there until the end of November 25th or November 27th, I think it is, November 27th. And so Saturn and Aries transit alone is going to be activating these bones, these things that have been pressed, the memories that have been pressed, the limitations, the oppression, the karmas, okay, the structures and things of time and memory when we talk about this Saturnian energy, okay? So I just want y'all to get grounded because we do have a lot of energy right now that is in retrograde. We have Mercury retrograde, we have Neptune retrograde, we have Pluto retrogrades. So definitely take this time, know that things are working out, trust the process. That's a message that I've been getting, I would say for the past week. I randomly saw it on the wall or something like that. It was etched into the wall, but trust the process of the things that are happening in your life, and also take the time to slow down. Usually retrograde season usually calls for us to take time to reiterate, re-go back and things like that. So when we're talking about Saturn energy in itself from an evolutionary perspective, we're talking about this time and limitations can mean many things of what we're talking about, limits here, but it's the maturing or the aging of something. I think of processing, or not necessarily processing, but the process that wine has to go through. When somebody says they've aged like fine wine, and that's what I think of when I think of this process here. Now, before I get into that, I do want to say, again, welcome y'all, everybody who's coming in for the first time. Welcome to my humble abode. For those of y'all that's checking in and have been checking in, what's good? I hope y'all are well. If you would like to book a personal reading, you can definitely have a new link now. I've changed some things and will be changing some things, especially during this Mercury retrograde. Of course, I like to try things. But if you're interested in seeing how this Saturn retrograde in Aries is going to be affecting you, you can definitely book a personal reading, or just in general alone if you would like to book a personal reading. I also am going to be moving our lives to Sunday. So they'll probably be a little bit earlier, and I'll talk about why, not this week, but next week, if you're interested in my astro traveling series. I've currently moved to my moon line, so I'll be doing a little clip about that and what that looks like and things like that. I'm sorry, y'all. Things have been off kilter. I know I just started the membership and things as well, but I had to recalibrate and things. So now I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, let's get it on. So back to Saturn and this energy of Saturn retrograde, and just like I said, from an evolutionary lens here, we see the roots, the ancient roots of Saturn. We can talk about it from a Roman perspective, or just talk about it just in general from an ancient perspective and things and what that has looked like over the years. And this is where we've seen the god of time, where we've seen agriculture, where we've seen harvest. I would even like to add architecture in here, because Saturn rules the bones of things, the foundation of things, the structures. Yes, we can speak to Taurus. I think about the beautification of the architecture in general, because we're talking about Venusian energy. Also, we could talk about Libra, but I think if we're talking about the foundational, the blueprint of things, we can talk Saturnian energy. So we can also see this here. All right. So this is where we've seen gods that were structured in the guise of being the creator, but also the destroyer, and civilization, and also decay. What happens to the bones after you pass away? They begin to Well, some, depending on how you take care of them, but they begin to deteriorate. I can also think of this energy as the embalming process as well. Because think about it, we're going from this energy, so we talked about Saturn, this energy of like structure and time and decay and the karma and the maturing or responsibility of something. And then it goes from this energy of Aries, which is the first, it's new, right? It's head first, it's this pioneering energy into something different. Is passion, energy, vitality, the soldier, the warrior as well here too. And then it goes back into the spiritual warrior, which is Pisces, like I said, September 1st, right? And so I think this is going to be, this retrograde reminds me of going into time and under the guise of, they don't look good, I'm sorry. Looking at myself in the mirror like, dang, sorry y'all, it's almost a season, right? It's almost a Virgo season and Leo season is right around the corner, so I'm getting ready. You know what I'm saying? Getting ready to pop on out. But we'll talk about that on another video or whatever. But anyway, and then we talk about going from this Aries energy into this Pisces energy of the warrior, the concrete warrior, and the physical warrior into the spiritual realm and what that looks like. So you might feel at this time very, you might start to feel internally charged up, but also tired at the same time. I think our bodies are going through, are having like many downloads that are being like put into our bodies from like past things. You definitely want to pay attention to your dreams at this time, especially if we have Jupiter in Cancer once again. You want to pay attention to the things that are coming through your mental, your mind, because Aries rules the head. So you want to pay attention to like what's coming through in the mental. And like I said, for Pisces also too in the spiritual realm as well. So this is where we talk about also too, when we talk about this evolutionary themes of Saturn, what it governs is also contractual agreements. And this is soul contractual agreements, okay? So when you come into this lifetime, for example, when we came into this life, I know y'all, maybe some of y'all probably heard this before, but this is something that is coming to mind when I think about this. Of like, we signed the contract to come back to this earth. And I know people would say, did I sign the contract to come here? Did I say that I wanted to come back here and things like that? And yeah, we did. We did sign these spiritual contracts to do what it is that we came to do in this particular lifetime, in this particular portal, this particular world, you know. Shout out to my Saturn in Aquarius gang, you know what I'm saying? If that's you, drop a comment down below. No shade to anybody else, you know, but this is also going to be activated for us because it's going to be activating something in us, because this is going to be sextiling, which in the sextile is going to be forming, let's say a teamwork makes the dream work kind of energy between this Pluto energy that we're going through and also Saturn and Aries. And just in general, just going over what that looks like in community and collective, also what it means to be a part of a collective, but also an individual within that collective, meaning having your own autonomy, which that's a lot what Aries also too talks about in the physical and also in the spiritual realm as well. Okay, we can also see fears that come up that are being, you know, stemming from the past, that have been buried, especially when it has to do with like value, worth, your autonomy, your identity, the ways in which you know, stand on business for yourself, you know, how you see not only the value and the worth in yourself, but also seeing what you bring to the table. All right, proverbially, our actual physical table, but really proverbial table that we have here, right? This is also can bring up feelings of like inadequacy, if you don't feel adequate, if you don't feel like, again, if you're enough. But this is where mastery and how we talk about this fire being charged within the bones and the legacy is coming to the forefront here, all right? And when we talk about the bones, when I talk about the bones, I mean physical, but I also mean the things, memories and things that are also stored are not only our genetics per se, but our ancestry, our bloodlines, you know, and things like that. A lot of times when I think of the bones, I think of not just embalming, but the ancient Comedians or Egyptians, when you go to bury or bring up the body, what is left is the bones, the teeth, to trace back your lineage and things and where you come from. You could tell a lot about a person by their bones, by their structure of their bones, and things like that, which there's many studies about that, and we can go into that another time. So Saturn asks in this time, well, what am I taking responsibility for in my own life, right? Aries is me, I am, right? So what am I taking responsibility for? Who did I come here to be, and not the burdens that ancestrally something has passed to you, or ancestrally something that has been passed down for you, but you taking responsibility over your own world, being the creator of that world, right? This is where we talk about the first fire, Aries being a fire sign. This is the first, becoming the creator. Who am I now? Who am I in this time that I'm moving through now? And how am I defining that and what that looks like for me, right? And I'm coming back to that because I know we talked about that in the Saturn and Aries video, but just reiterating this as well as we move through these times, right? So re-examining what structures have I inherited, versus the ones that I actually need, right? I could share something with myself, just personally, some of the things that I've been thinking about during this Saturn in Aries energy that I've been navigating through. And I'll talk a little bit more about this definitely in the astro traveling series and things, but just like my identity outside of America, right? There are things that I've carried within and from not only my childhood, but also previous lifetimes that I have resided in. And coming from America and then moving out of America, right, to live in a completely different place. Again, I'm trying not to give away exactly what, but to live in a completely different place outside of the land in which I was born, right? And having to grapple with my own personal resonance of my identity. Is different having a Black American experience, and what that looks like in the U.S. versus going outside of the U.S. and having other experiences in a new place, and where does that put me, and how am I showing up within these spaces that I'm in, now, and how do I want to embody this Aryan energy and also this Piscean energy, my whole self, versus the fragments or the shells and the pieces that maybe I carried from, like I said, previous lifetimes, from ancestral patterns and lifetimes and things like that. Going also too on a solo journey, like taking it there, you know what I'm saying? Being able to be in a position where I'm able to not only just travel for the sake of traveling and taking a vacation, but also my intention and my purpose within traveling and going to the places that I am going to, so it's, y'all, like I said, we're going to talk about it on my astro traveling moonline locational astrocartography series and things next week, but this is something that I wanted to bring to the forefront here. And also confronting the ancestral patterns, again, quoted in our bones. I think of Aries energy also too as Lilith. I also think of Aquarius as Lilith energy here. I think of, even though necessarily Aries isn't necessarily talking about the divine feminine itself, I know we look at Aries as the divine masculine, but even with the duality of this energy of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, I'm looking at what it meant for me as a woman, and then also the members of my maternal line as well, the things that they've had to go through, like their own autonomy and freedom, okay? As a woman, maybe you couldn't travel, or maybe you couldn't have this Aryan independence of, for example, at one point in time, owning your own bank account per se. You know what I mean? And I say this because Saturn is like a structure, and then, Aries is that independence and having that autonomy to be able to do these things, you know. And so I say that to say, just personally, as my own, you know, resonance and what some of the things that I'm seeing is like me being able to move and choosing to move freely and independently and sovereign in my own day-to-day life. If y'all know what that means, and please leave me a comments down below. Y'all know I love y'all's comments, and also too, please like and share and subscribe, so this can get to who it needs to, if you resonate with it, for sure. But definitely tell me in the comments what y'all think as well, just this with this Saturnian energy, and maybe some of the things that you're also cycling through at this time with the Saturn and Aries, okay? So also another thing that comes up, especially when we're talking about Saturnian energy, is also like authority. This also rules the governments, the corporations, the organizations and things, you know, the traditional foundations of the world in which we live in, right? So this is like facing old fears of like authority wounds, right? That block that true sovereignty. This is somebody being governed over, or to be governed over you, right? The government to govern over something, right? So dealing with that, you know, one thing that I've definitely been struggling with, and I've talked a little bit about this on our lives and stuff, and like really struggling with this idea of still trying to navigate this world under the guise of capitalism, but also trying to retain and pull in what it means to be sovereign outside of that, you know, like knowing, you know, removing this veil, right? Removing this veil of this corporation that we live in, right? Because that's what it is, essentially, a corporation. And this is not me saying it by any means, y'all, that the earth is not a beautiful place. I'm not trying to be in the Saturnian bag of like the pessimistic energy. By no means. I think this Saturnian energy just gives this realism, right? This realism scope to like what's actually happening. And then also being in this, as we go back to this like Piscean energy of like, okay, we see things for what it is. Like we're living in this spirit body of Aries, this fire energy in ourselves, but then we go back to this Piscean energy and we're living in this world of materialism, right, and the physicality of things, but then we also have our spirits that we need to be, you know, in check with as well here too. So the things that I've been kind of picking up on with this Aries, Saturn and Aries energy, but we also talk about with this Aries energy, this you know, memory of the ways in which we've had to survive. Again, going back to like Aries being this warrior, you know, and having to fight this fight that essentially, I'm sorry, y'all, I keep pulling this down because I'm like, on my skin, I'm a little hot too. Essentially, we're fighting these battles that we didn't sign up to. We signed up to fight. I know we talked about like the spiritual contractual agreements, but these are not something that we are necessarily were in agreement to. Meaning that we're being turned against our will to have to, not submit, that's not the word. It's not to submit, but we have to surrender to a reality that we didn't necessarily create. And I know some of y'all might be like, well, did we not create this reality? That this wasn't something that we were participating in it, but that doesn't mean that we were the creators of what it is that we're living in. We're now just trying to figure out how we can move not only around it, but for it to also crumble as well, right? Okay, so, you know, this, when we talk about the Saturn and Aries energy, we're talking about, again, the warriors, the initiators, the rebels, and also to the loners, you know, that were forced to live this life of moving into autonomy, you know, having dignity and integrity over their sovereignty and what that looks like here. You know, you can also see this energy. I know we're not necessarily talking about Aquarius per se, but you can see a lot of outcasts in this energy, or feeling like an outsider, you know, in certain situations, scenarios and things, and having to still maintain and also make a way for yourself and to be that pioneer to do something different alone until you actually meet the people that are also supposed to come with you on that journey, right? So that's something that we can see, right? And what we also can see is this idea with Aries of like, I need to go at it alone. I need to do these things alone without having like proper assistance and help and support, you know, and to feel that wound of having to maybe go at things alone and not necessarily having people around you that resonate with the journey that you're going on. So this is what is activating here, y'all. And I'm pretty sure we can all feel it now. You know, like I said, we do have fire on fire at the moment right now, and we'll have fire on fire in the moments, especially with this Mercury retrograde. And then next year, which we'll talk about a little later on in the year, but we'll see the South Node go also into Leo as well. So all these themes are going to be, you know, essentially coming up, and we're going to have to, in this time, understand and recognize where we are at, you know, as, like I said, as individuals, right? And then also beneath another layer of this is like looking at this energy of like, okay, well, if I'm not strong, does that not make me worthy? You know, a lot of times we see in society weakness of what it means to be weak, right? This sensitivity of showing your emotions, you know, feeling like you have to, I don't know why I'm getting this energy of like feeling like you have to bear arms or bear your soul, you know what I mean, when it comes to certain things, because, you know, initially what it means to be vulnerable, to receive help and receive support and not go at things all alone sometimes for the world that we live in of an individualistic, I even feel like if we ask for help or if we need support, that essentially makes us weak. So that's also going to be coming up here as well. And it's an interesting dichotomy to have, especially because, like I said, we do have Jupiter in Cancer as well. So, you know, and Jupiter in Cancer is the extension and the, you know, Jupiter, what we talk about going on this journey, this longer journey, also what it means to expound upon that particular journey and what it means to gain wisdom on that particular journey. And Cancer is being the energy of nurturing, right? And the reason why I say it's like tension forming here, because Jupiter, or Cancer essentially, is a cardinal sign as well as Aries. So there's this tension that's forming between this idea, this needing or necessity of this individualistic nature, and then Cancer coming in needing this balance of home and family. And even if it's not your blood, what does that mean for you in this time? So yeah, so Saturn retrograde is bringing all this to the surface. So some of the questions that I would have you ask yourself, and if you would like to comment down below and let me know how you feel and what you think, where did I inherit my need to fight? And this could be physically fighting, or this could be like internally with the self and what you got going on. Who taught me that my softness is a weakness or a liability? Okay, where did you inherit that from? Did you inherit it from when you were a child? You know, I keep hearing like I had to be the strong one, or I had to be the strong one, or I had to be the one that had to take responsibility for A, B, and C. Okay? You had to be a soldier in a sense, whether that's a spiritual soldier, or that's like an actual physical soldier for you and yours, right? And it's like, what emotional weight am I carrying that's not even mine? So this is gonna recalibrate this energy of going into this scope and this frame of what that looks like for you, right? So, you know, the bone of fire, we talk about the bones, right? We see this being lit to a torch of hyper-independence, generational hyper-independence, the need to go at it alone, the need to be self-made. I did it all by myself, ain't nobody help me. Like we're not in need of help, if we're not in need of support. Like it's being looked at as something that's a trophy on our backs, when we actually are craving community amongst each other, right? And support. from each other. Again, going back to this dichotomy of Jupiter and Cancer, and also I would even want to go and say Neptune in Aries, right, as well. I mean, because we're also in a retrograde with Neptune and Aries, or Neptune as well too. So having a balance between these two. Again, going back to this, fear of vulnerability and often being seen as a weakness. If I ask for help, or if I become vulnerable, or if they see me cry, or if they see me in this vulnerable place, does that make me weak, right? I always keep hearing, like, especially with the Saturn and Aries energy, of like this idea of like, oh, you need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You need to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, we haven't already been knocked down so much from this world, from this earth, and having to live under the guise, or living, not having to, but living under the guise of the system. Is beat us to a pulp, y'all. And I say this because I want y'all to be easy on yourselves in this transition. This is not a one size fits all thing. This is not an easy resolve either with this. You feel me? So, like, I know it's easier said than done, but be easy with yourselves during this retrograde and allow yourself to sit with these questions, And if there's any other questions, again, that you would like to drop in the comments down below, please feel free to do so. And then also, too, the belief that love must be earned through labor or protection. So feeling like you have to, in this idea of performance, which I think it goes also too hand in hand with this Mercury retrograde in Leo, that you have to earn things, in order to be, right? You have to earn to live. The cost of living, right? You have to work in order to be fed. You have to do this thing in order to feel praised, out of your labor, So then oftentimes, a lot of times, you'll see relationships start to become transactional and not based off of like real resonance and love and care, or you have to do something in order to do and feel protected and things, you know what I mean? So all this stuff is coming up in here, and so what you'll see is this lineage that is coming to the forefront. It's like coming again from people who again have been warriors, maybe fugitives of war, or fugitives of, again, like kind of outsider energy, who had no choice, but to kind of move on their own and stuff like that. But Saturn, what it's doing when we're talking about the maturing of something, or the maturity of something, is asking you now that we need to break this cycle. And with Saturn energy, it always takes time. It's the old. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and record the end of this. Mercury retrograde is due. The connection literally went completely out while I was recording. So just to kind of finish up what I was talking about, and kind of just bring everything in whole, some of the karmic lessons that we can learn from this Saturn and Aries transit in retrograde here is, true courage doesn't equal avoidance. This is Aries energy. We talk about embodying the energy of the soul, the vitality, the spirit, fire, right? The opposite of Aries is Libra. And even though there is a need and necessary times where things can be diplomatic, we don't want to fall into pleasing other people over our own needs and wants and desires and things that we've set out to do while we're here, even if those things aren't necessarily fully 100% clear, And then also, like I talked about, that dichotomy between, Jupiter and Cancer and this Aries energy, the Saturn and Aries, Neptune and Aries energy. You can be both an initiator, Aries, and you can also be a nurturer. You can find the balance between those two. And also, I want to say you can also give love and receive love, and be open to what that looks like for you to be, and not just in a romantic sense, even though it could be in a romantic sense. This is also just, platonic friendship, tribe building, community building, to be able to be on both ends and to find balance in both of those ends, to find and embrace community and family, even if it's not your blood family, that makes you feel seen and makes you feel heard and makes you feel cared for, and also allows you and encourages you to stand in your individuality as an individual while simultaneously being a part of those communities, right? And, last but not least, you don't need to earn your existence through exhaustion. You don't need to be depleted. You don't need to be out here moving crazy, you know what I'm saying, to try to prove yourself to people, try to prove yourself to, to state your claim that you hear, it's just about being. It's, like I said, that embodiment of this Aries energy, right? So this foundation that we're here to build, it asks, can I still stand tall without the armor? That armor, the opposite of the armor is vulnerability. Can I stand true in that? Even if the people around me don't necessarily receive it well, can I still be and show up as that? And what does that look like for me to show up without my armor? What are some of the things that I'm talking about now then? What are some of the things that I'm experiencing without having my guards and armor up, And how can you let yourself be supported and still be sovereign? Like I said, it goes back to that Cancer, Jupiter and Cancer, Cancer season, but also Saturn and Aries, and also Neptune and Aries, dichotomy of the balance of this too, right? So, this is the season to listen to the bones. This is the season to listen to what your spirit is telling you and your soul is telling you, We have to remember. This is about the remembrance of who we are, where we come from, ancestral codes, and embodiment of those previous incarnations of the self and who you are, not who you've been told to be, right? So I'm just going to leave this here. Like I said, it kind of chucked me off at the end because the connection and everything. Mercury retrograde is definitely Mercury retrograde. But, definitely if you feel this, like, share, subscribe. Please leave me a comment down below. What are you feeling? What are y'all thinking? How is the retrogrades treating y'all at this time? And stay tuned for the next episodes. Next month, we'll be going in deeper to Saturn and Pisces. And then towards September, we'll be going through the rest of the Saturn signs and what they look like through those energies as well. So, I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. It feels good to somewhat be back, but really be back for real. And if you haven't already, make sure you also subscribe to the free Substack if you want to stay in touch. We are going to try to move this thing on to Sundays now for the lives, but it will probably be a little bit earlier in the day. So you can definitely check that out. And you already know what it is. It's Araneae Storm checking in, checking out. You know where to find me for personal readings. Other than that, without a doubt, deuces.